up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. Stephen Will here to go over the start-sit questions for Week 4. Will, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, buddy. How about yourself?
Can't complain. Kind of upset that we are 4 weeks in, and now we're starting to experience all the fun COVID stuff that the season's going to have to offer.
Yeah, I'm sure every podcast we listen to this week, or anyone listens to this week, is going to have some COVID hint to it. So, yeah, it's ever evolving. We don't know all the NFL's regulations, but just have to wait and see what they actually say is going to happen, and kind of roll from there.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the fantasy outlets themselves will come out and let us know how they're handling things if you get some weird situations.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to come down to. If a game is played weeks later, the fantasy outlet itself will let you know what the plan is, hopefully before Sunday, so that you can plan accordingly.
Yeah, for sure. But it got something a little different to start the show. We got a special question that I guess we could start with here. Well, favorite Dynasty buys and sells. Do you have anyone specific that you're wanting to buy in Dynasty?
There's a couple guys that I think that are a little lower. I'll go with a couple top names and maybe some, maybe lower names. One guy that really stuck out to me was, I think DJ Moore come off as a pretty low. Dynasty may be a little harder, but I kind of look at it, from the 1 year perspective here in redraft, and I feel like he's really down in redraft. But he's got a lot of targets, a lot of catches, a lot of yards. He just hasn't gotten in the end zone yet. I think if you can, get someone who maybe hasn't specifically noticed that or doesn't really see the positive regression on touchdowns coming, I think he could be a good one. Who's top of your list there?
It's quite interesting. I didn't even think of DJ Moore, but that's a good one because, yeah, depending on the owner, he could be off. I thought that we were going to cross paths on Thielen. Partially because we both like him, partially because we're talking about buying him in our league. But I think he's a perfect candidate with having, a down game, Jefferson having a big game. He's not on the right side of the age bracket. And I think people look at that and they get kind of scared. But I look at that and say, this team defense sucks. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. They may want to run, but they're not going to be able to. And, Jefferson could emerge and Thielen still be valuable. We saw Thielen and Diggs coexist for the longest time. And if Jefferson doesn't emerge, because it's one game and all rookies have, one game typically, then the Thielen's going to be even more valuable. So I would definitely be taking a look at Thielen. I know there are two top guys. Are there any other guys you just want to give a quick mention to?
Some buys I think if people may be a little down on, a couple top running back names and Kenyon Drake and Joe Mixon. They're still going to be, pretty expensive. But, maybe put a feeler out there, see, what the manager of their teams are feeling about them. Maybe they're getting a little anxious, especially Drake, given that he doesn't have, a ton of, track record behind him. He could be something you could look into. And a couple of other guys that are maybe a little off the beaten path is if, a contending team is the Dallas Goedert manager. Maybe you can get him a little cheaper. Now he may have a little window open up with the injury. And one that I think at the very least is going to be cheaper than the preseason hype is Antonio Gibson. What do you think the price is on him now, given, it's skyrocketed leading up to week 1 and hasn't really popped much here through 3 weeks?
So that's good timing. I saw a Twitter poll. I don't recall if it was yesterday or the day before. Would you take Gibson or would you take the 111 in 2021? I don't know how you find out somebody has a 111 next year, but for argument's sake, would you take Gibson on the 111 and the Gibson side won like 70% to 30%? I am not on that side. I would rather take the 111 right now because we haven't seen it, and I haven't, I like Gibson from a take a shot standpoint, but I don't know. I'm just kind of shaky on him in the situation. So to me, it's probably still in the second range, but definitely to a majority of people, it seems like it's in the first.
Yeah, I probably am. I'm right there with you. I probably take the pick, and I imagine this is just late first or something. But late first is going to be something that is going to hold its value for the next 8 months. Probably get more valuable as we go along. Whereas Gibson, you don't know which way it's going to go. Obviously, you'll be able to utilize him, to play actually. But if he continues the way he is, you're probably not going to start him much. Whereas you probably have that, trade chip in that late first.
On my end, a couple other buys to call out. A couple older guys. You got Le'Veon Bell coming back soon and Marvin Jones. Both I can imagine are going to be cheaper. Marvin Jones would probably be real cheap. Bell would probably still command like a second round pick or something. But you never know. Depending on the owner, they might take a third in a player or something. So those two in the older realm, OBJ is always an interesting throw out because it's really owner dependent. And then I think I got two interesting ones, Will. A quarterback in Sam Darnold. Given the recent news about Gase, his price might have kind of stabilized. But I've been kind of thinking all year, this is Gase's last year. If you're a Sam Darnold guy, it might be a good year to grab him up for something cheap and stash him. But probably even the more interesting one is Cam Akers, with Henderson really emerging his injury, Akers' injury, and then Malcolm Brown emerging, also getting hurt. I think the price on him could be lower. It depends how much of that rookie fever is still there, but I'd be willing to buy him if that owner's come down, given the circumstances there.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. I mean, maybe you get someone who's panicking a bit. They spent a high draft pick on Akers, and they're expecting him to produce, especially if they're trying to contend this year. And even when he comes back healthy, he's probably not going to be a guy that you can definitely start right away. It may take mid-season or later. So I think it could be a solid buy low, depending on what the manager of that team, what their outlook is.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side of that, Will, who's a top guy that you're looking to sell?
So two guys I think that are top of mind for me, both running backs. You got two guys that I just don't think are long, for their respective teams and just for the league in general. One of them probably a little more obvious, and David Johnson, playing well to start, and he's got a nice little stretch coming up as well that you could either use to kind of further your sales pitch, or hope that he does well, and after he actually plays well over those few games, you could use that just more production that he's putting up. But I mean, he's one injury away from not having too much longer of a career, and even so, he's getting up there in age, so I think you can maximize the value for him. Another guy that's playing well, but he's on the younger side, but I think you and I both were on the same page as James Conner. I think he's somebody that, this is a good year to try to sell and get out from under him. I just think that Pittsburgh is going to move in a different direction here once that rookie contract's up. And I don't know that anyone's going to be too tied to him. What do you think about either of those two?
I think they both make sense. I don't know what I would do with David Johnson. Like, I'd rather have him off my roster, but I don't know. Like, I'd almost rather wait for him to have another big game before I sell him.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely agree with both of you, or both of them. I have two running backs as well. Kind of on the flip side, where you went, well, I guess Connor really hasn't been around that long, but it feels like you got with two guys that have been around a little bit longer. I went the opposite direction. So Myles Gaskin would be top of mind for me because he's put himself into a pretty good role, kind of in that Lev Bell, he's going to give you a solid floor kind of a role. But I don't see the long term for him. I could see him getting replaced like this year. So, if I'm a contender, I'm keeping him. And if I'm not a contender, I can flip him, and his stock's, I don't think, going to get any higher. So I think you can flip him now for a solid price. And then the other one that I know some people are really going to hate is going to be Henderson. I think his stock's at an all-time high, given how well he's been doing. And, even with him doing well, they drafted Akers for a reason. You're just not going to bench the guy. So, it's going to be an RBBC eventually, or maybe Akers does take over. If Henderson was this far ahead of Akers and Brown, I think week one, you would have seen Henderson, but instead it took a bunch of injuries for him to get the role. And he's looked good. he has looked great, and credit to him for that. But I'd imagine that ceiling is going to start falling soon. So I'd rather sell him now when you can get max value and maybe still a little bit of the rookie hype from back then. You definitely have some Henderson believers out there.
A couple other guys that I had on a list here. Two of them I think aren't probably not too long for the league, but we'll see. Another one could be a rising star, but maybe you get a big value for him now. So the two guys, I think, I don't know how long their NFL career is going to be. You got Al Lazard, who just kind of blew up here this week, and people have been hype on him. I'm pretty high on him as well, but maybe you can get a little more than what he's valued at, and Gardner Minshew, especially in a team where someone really needs a quarterback. A lot of people, we all think Jacksonville's going to look into quarterback in the draft, but we'll see there. One guy that I have listed here, it's kind of a bold take, but what do you think about trying to sell Calvin Ridley?
It depends on what I'm going to get for him.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't think I would go looking to sell him because he's exactly what I would want for all teams. He's young. He's a breakout star. He's got a top quality QB for a long time and an offense that's going to need to throw the ball for a long time, I think. So he's definitely the kind of guy that I want as a contender and I want as a rebuild.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I mean, his stock is very high. And if you're willing to if you're going to find somebody who's willing to pay up for him, at some point, the price is worth it. Right. So I'd be willing to, as I'm willing to sell anybody. I just wouldn't be looking to actively.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, is he going to blow up and, be the next Godwin, which hopefully, we're hoping Godwin's healthy and he can continue to blow up. Or, is it something where, he goes in another direction? I guess, we don't really know if he maybe reverts back to being kind of a wide receiver 2 that a lot of people anticipated, not this, crazy wide receiver 1 that he has been. But we will see. You got any other sells there?
Yeah, 2 quick ones to throw out. Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm.
An easy one considering we just bought him. We're the 3-0 team, bought it from the 0-3 team. I think it makes sense. Again, on the wrong side of 30. Not that he's old, but these rushing quarterbacks, they tend to peter out a little bit earlier than your typical pocket guys. And there's just more uncertainty. Like, is he going to get a long-term contract with the Patriots? Does he have 2 years, 3 years left in him? I just think you can get a lot for him now. His value's bounced back up. So I would be interested in selling Newton, depending on your quarterback situation and whatnot. And then the other one is going to be Robbie Anderson. He's kind of the same story as Henderson, is that his value's at an all-time high right now. And with DJ Moore there, CMC coming back, I just can't see that being a long-term thing. I mean, maybe he's pretty valuable all year long. He's a wide receiver 2 or better, but past this year, I don't know. I think I'd rather cash in and get the value now.
I think that makes sense for both guys there. I mean, it's tough, but I think that makes sense. I guess time we flip over to our start sit questions then.
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll start with the quarterback as normal here. We have Jared Goff at the Giants or a Burrow versus the Jaguars. Who you starting there?
Yeah, one's a little tougher than I'd imagined preseason. Both have really good matchups. You imagine that the Jaguars are going to hang around longer, and maybe that's a closer game with Burrow. But I think I still lean Jared Goff. I just like the supporting cast better. Obviously, there's a chance that they go up early with having a quality defense as well. But I think the Bengals, maybe able to establish the run a little bit here as well. We've seen, some teams be somewhat successful against the Jaguars, against the run. So I think it's maybe closer, Goff and Burrow in kind of game script than we would be led to believe. So I'll lean Goff. What about you?
Yeah, it's Goff pretty easily for me. I'm not passing up the matchup against the Giants. The realm exists where, Henderson gets a couple touchdowns and, something else fluky happens on a third. And then, the game script flips not in Goff's favor. But, I mean, he has been great for fantasy the past couple weeks. and he's got a great matchup here. I am not going to pass that up for a rookie. Sorry to kind of discredit Burrow, but
No,
he's been good, but I mean, rookies have those games where they just disappear, and I don't see that in the cards for Goff unless that kind of weird circumstance happens. So
yeah,
I don't mind Burrow. I like him this week, but I like Goff a fair bit more.
All right, next up we have pick 2, Myles Gaskin against the Seahawks, McKinnon against the Eagles, Philip Lindsay at New York, Rojo at home for the Giants, or at home for the Chargers.
So Lindsay is taken out of the equation immediately. I have no interest in starting him. I like Lindsay, but now that he's back, I need to see a week or two of what the role is going to be before I trust anything. And then even this week, if he comes out and have a big week, he's still facing the Jets. I mean, that doesn't say a lot to me. So Lindsay is out immediately and probably out next week as well. Gaskin is definitely in, just because of what the Seahawks defense has been giving up. I mean, they've been giving up mostly to the wide receiver position. That's been the big story. But, I mean, offense as a whole are scoring. So I definitely want Gaskin. The other one, it really just depends on who's playing. If McKinnon's playing this week, I'm definitely picking McKinnon against the Eagles. It seems like a great matchup, and he looked really good before he got hurt last week. If he's not playing, then, I'll easily take Rojo over Lindsay. What about you?
This is, once again, health is a factor for a couple of these guys, but pretty easy for me. If everyone's healthy, I'm going Gaskin and McKinnon. Like the matchups, like the usage. I'm still unsure about that Tampa backfield, man. It's so hard to predict week to week which of them is going to blow up. And Rojo's, messed up on a couple routes, a couple, easy catches. So I can see Brady just kind of behind the scenes putting in, a word for Leonard Fournette. So Gaskin and McKinnon for me.
Okay, next one, PPR. We're going to the wide receiver position here, Will. Would you rather start Odell Beckham Jr. at Dallas or Allen Robinson versus the Colts?
Yeah, I mean, this is the week. If Odell's going to have a blow-up week and look like the Odell
tongue twister there.
Beckham Jr. Yes. It's going to be against Dallas. The game script there. Dallas is going to put up a bunch of points. They're going to let up a bunch of points because that's their defense. So Odell, this is all the makings for him to be the guy and look like himself. All that being said, I'm going to start Allen Robinson against the Colts. I think he gets a little bit of a boost with Nick Foles coming in, but I just trust the floor of what I'm going to get with Robinson. And I do think there's still a ceiling there. He's talented enough. Foles, can go deep. He can take a couple shots to him. So I'm going to go Allen Robinson. I just think while there's maybe a higher floor for Beckham, I think, or higher ceiling for Beckham, is just a much lower floor.
I am willing to take on that floor. I will start OBJ. It feels like the same reasoning I had a couple weeks ago when they were facing the Bengals. Like, it just seemed like a smash matchup. Dallas has been getting thrown on. Dallas is going to score a lot. The Browns are going to have to throw the ball a fair bit. So it definitely seems like an OBJ kind of game, and I'd be willing to place my bet on him there. On the flip side, Allen Robinson's fine. If that's the play you want to make, I have no issue with that. But, Colts defense is definitely stronger. I am not the biggest believer in Foles. I want to see how things shake out there first. So I will, I'll take OBJ.
Man, this next one's interesting. PPR, CeeDee Lamb now in a 4-way tandem at wide receiver against the Browns, and John Brown against the Vegas Raiders.
I am probably one of the few people that perked up when Cedric Wilson was catching touchdowns.
Yeah, you recognize the name, right?
Yeah, old 49ers receiver Cedric Wilson. I don't remember what era that was. I feel like it was the Dennis Erickson. I think that was the coach. Dennis Erickson. Quarterback was Tim Rattay, Ken Dorsey, Alex Smith in his rookie year for a while. Some names you haven't heard in a long time. JT O'Sullivan. I think it was that era. He might have hung on to like the end of the era with Garcia and like T.O. and Ty Streets and stuff. Maybe I don't quite recall, but yeah, and I perked up a little bit. But anyway, I do agree with you. This is an interesting question because John Brown has been playing better than I think a lot of people expected. I think I don't know with Lamb because, like you said, it's a four-way street. Plus, you throw in or not. I mean, we're joking, but like four-way street in that you have Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb, and then you have Dalton Schultz is beginning plenty of targets. You always have Zeke getting targets. So there's just. I think I said it last week. Maybe it was just on Twitter. Like I feel like it's gonna be Gallup one week, Lamb another, and you're just never gonna guess it right. I think I'm going to go with John Brown. I'll stay in the Josh Allen flames, and I hope that works out. I'm fine either way, though. Where do you lean?
Yeah, I lean the other way. I'm going to go CD. I think there's more consistency there, and he still has that boom potential, like you mentioned. They're going to have to throw the ball because I think Cleveland's going to kind of be able to have their way and then likely be running the ball and score some points. But, I mean, CD's been in double digits, in each of his 3 games. He's got 5 catches for 60 yards, 6 for 100, 5 for 65 and a touchdown. I'm sorry, 5 for 65, no touchdown. But he's in double digits there. And John Brown, the floor is 0. And we saw it last week. He had 2 targets, no catches. So I know he's had some big games, but I'm going to go CD Lamb here.
Another interesting one up next, I think. Would you rather start Deshaun Watson versus that bad Minnesota defense or Cam Newton at Kansas City where you're going to have to put up points?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think it's a floor ceiling play. Like if I need the option of scoring a ton, I'm going to go Cam. Watson's, not too far off, but the floor I think is a lot lower for Cam. Kansas City, especially at home, and I know that there's no crowd there, but still seems to play differently. We saw they stifled the ultimate rushing quarterback in Lamar just last week. So I lean Watson, I think, in general, but if you need ultimate ceiling, I don't mind going Cam Newton.
Yeah, I lean Watson as well. I agree with you with it when it comes to the floor. I don't know if I agree with the ceiling portion just because the Vikings defense is so bad. I think Newton probably does edge him out, but I'm not sure that it's a big enough gap to make a difference for me. So I'm fine with both, but I will go with Watson for that defensive matchup.
Okay, next up, we've got PPR, Todd Gurley against Green Bay, Myles Gaskin against home for Seattle.
Oh, man. If you would have told anybody that we'd be discussing this in the preseason, they would have thought that we were making a player up.
Yeah, first and foremost, this is a fake player.
I know. It's just, oh, man. But I guess I'll take Gaskin. For everything I said about him earlier, like the Seahawks, he's just been giving up a lot of points, and that's going to give him a lot of opportunity. I mean, Gurley could be fine because I could see that being a high-scoring game as well. But Atlanta's been doing a lot of damage through the air, and that's not Gurley anymore. So I'll take Gaskin here.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm kind of in a situation where do I start Gurley or a lesser guy because I have Carson hurt in the league, and I Carlos Hyde, a couple of other mid-range people on the lower end, and I can't take Gurley out of the lineup for the upside. Gaskin's definitely a nice option, so I don't put it past you, but I'm gonna ride here with Gurley and kind of hope for the touchdown upside. I don't think he's gotten in the end zone yet this year, so I think he's due for a game where he puts up 2 touchdowns. Actually, no, he's got I think 2 touchdowns on the year, but he's due for a double-digit touchdown or a double-digit touchdown. Wow, multiple touchdown game.
Yeah, fair. Next one, we got 5 people to choose from here. Will PPR? Would you rather start Russell Gage at Green Bay, Greg Ward at San Francisco, Rojo versus the Chargers, Shenault at Cincinnati, or Anthony Miller at Indy?
This is tough, man. This is a stinky one. Not thrilled about too many of these people. I have not been a Rojo fan really ever. Kind of warmed up a little bit going into the year, and then they got Fournette and ruined it. So I'm not looking at Rojo. Probably not looking at Ward. You have a floor there, but there's not much ceiling with Greg Ward. Chenault, I think, is the opposite. You have a big ceiling. Maybe he blows up, but if you get Chark back, there's just too many mouths to feed. So it's down to Anthony Miller or Gage. And if Gage is healthy, even if Julio plays, he's not a bad play to get a solid baseline of 5 catches somewhere along that line. Anthony Miller is the hot button play, right? You don't. He could goose you, or he could come out, grab 4 catches for 3 touchdowns because he's, that deep threat. He's explosive. And Nick Foles likes to go deep. So I think I lean Anthony Miller here. But this is kind of one of those floor versus ceiling plays. So I wouldn't put it past you, if you want to take the points with Gage, but I'll probably take the upside with Anthony Miller here.
If Chark is out, does that make any difference to you?
I mean, I had that situation the other week too when Chark was out last week, and Chenault just didn't get as much of the work as we were hoping. I think he'll be worked in, but I just don't see the floor that I'd want for the risk that you're getting there.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm similar to you in that I'm crossing off Rojo. I am crossing off Ward. But I do differ in that I am crossing off Anthony Miller. He's a player right now that I'm willing to be late on. You might have started him week 1 and week 2, and then you got burned. And, he had a good week last week, but is it just a 1-week thing, or is it here to stay because he's talented and Foles is pulling the trigger now? I hope he works out because I like him. If you listen to all the mock drafts, you know that I liked him this year. But I want to see another game before I start trusting him again. For me, it comes down to Gage at Green Bay and Chenault at Cincy. It's tough. I kind of go back and forth if Chark's out. I think I lean Gage now. I feel like I go back and forth every day. But yeah, I think I'm leaning Gage now because they're going to have to pass the ball so much. I mean, that's kind of what you're going to have to say every day about Gage at this point, or every game about Gage. But they'll be passing the ball around. That's going to work out for him. And, like you said, Chenault just doesn't have a floor. So, if you go into a situation where, something happens on Thursday, Melvin Gordon goes off. Because who else is going to go off? But Melvin Gordon goes off. He ends up with 3 touchdowns and you need upside. I'm going Chenault. But outside of something like that happening, I'll take Gage.
All right. Next up, we have a standard scoring. Tyler Boyd against the Jaguars. Terry McLaurin against the Ravens. Or Michael Gallup against the Browns.
So I'll take Gallup out versus the Browns immediately. And it's not because I don't like him or the matchup. It's kind of the same thing with the Lamb situation of, I'm just, if I have 2 other quality options, I'm not going to bother rolling the dice. Between McLaurin and Boyd, I think they both are solid plays this week. I think the scoring format does come into play a little bit. Standard is going to benefit McLaurin more than it is Boyd, but Boyd's got the good matchup. McLaurin has a tougher matchup, but a good game script. So I think I'm going to trust in the talent of McLaurin to get open and the game script to force them to throw the ball a lot and force feed him. It's close though, but yeah, I'll go with McLaurin. How about you?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. I mean, I don't even in PPR, I think I would still go McLaurin. I think he is as close to being a wide receiver 1, locked and loaded the rest of the year for me as possible. The talent is there. Quarterback isn't great, but the opportunity's there. The only thing he's missing is having, a better quarterback, but he's got talent, he's got opportunity. He's going to put up numbers all year. It's not going to be pretty. The team's going to be, 3-13, but he is the real deal. So give me Terry McLaurin and just about any heads up, outside of those like elite wide receivers.
Okay, and our next one, Will, we're treading into the dangerous waters here. 0.5 PPR, James Conner at Tennessee or James Robinson at Cincy.
Yeah, the COVID potential, missed game, potential, Monday or Tuesday game is what some people are saying. definitely a little bit of risk here. So if you're going to go Connor, you need to know what you're getting into. James Robinson against Cincy's, this is tough. I think you probably got to go Connor. The track record's longer there. But both of these guys are not bad plays. I don't know that either of them have too much in the passing game to make them that much better than the other because of that. It's kind of a toss up for me. They're both decent RB2s at this point, probably flex options. So I'll go Connor.
It's funny. It's easy for me as well, but it's on the opposite end of things. I'm buying in on Robinson. I really like him. They both got good matchups. I think Cincy's like the 5th worst against running backs. Tennessee right now is like 9th. Not that I think that's going to be Tennessee all year, but that's where they're at right now. But more so, it comes down to if I have another solid option that I believe in, then I'm not dealing with the Tennessee Steelers stuff because I don't want to get burned. It takes one test Monday night to get that game postponed, and then you have no alternative. And depending on how the fantasy outlets are handling it, you're doomed. You just lost a player. So, it would be different if this was like Connor. It was like a flex, and it was Connor against like I don't know, Schultz, Dallas. Just throwing a name out there where it's like, okay, I'll take the risk on Connor. But when I have another solid option like Robinson, I'm not going to bother dealing with Connor and taking on that risk.
Yeah, I can't put it past you there on that. Next up, we got a pick 2. Terry McLaurin against the Ravens, as we said. DJ Moore against the Cardinals, or Kenny Galladay against the Saints.
I'll take McLaurin for all the reasons that we mentioned before. And I will stick with Galladay. With Michael Thomas practicing again, he could be playing this week, and I'm sure the Saints could be able to put up points on the Lions, and that's going to force the Lions to throw the ball. And I'll trust Galladay. I think DJ Moore is a fine play against the Cardinals, but his usage is all over the place because they're spreading the ball around so much. So Galladay and McLaurin for me. What do you think?
Yeah, first one, as I mentioned, is pretty easy. Back it up. McLaurin is an easy start here. I think I go DJ Moore slightly over Galladay. Galladay looked good, not great in his first game back. Likely going to have to put up some points. Michael Thomas or no Michael Thomas. Either way, the Saints likely going to score a lot. But I think we got a high-scoring game on our hands with the Panthers and Cardinals. And as we said, DJ Moore is putting up a ton of yards. I think he's top 10 in yards, if I remember. But he just hasn't scored yet. And you got to think there's going to be some positive regression coming up. He's, number 7 in PPR points, but number 3 in yards. He just doesn't have the touchdowns. So I definitely think that he is, he's due to, get in the end zone. And, I'll take DJ Moore and McLaurin.
Okay, our last start-sit question before we jump into some trades here. Drew Brees at Detroit or Gardner Minshew at Cincinnati?
Man, it shouldn't be as tough as it is, right? But Brees hasn't looked the same. And I know I want Goff over Burrow, but I do think there's a chance that, that Burrow-Minshew matchup is, somewhat high-scoring, like we hoped for Minshew and Fitzpatrick. Minshew's came out and had a bad game. We've seen, some last year and the first couple weeks here this year. He can put up some points, so I'll take Minshew here. I think it's crazy to say. It could be a high-scoring game on the Brees side. Michael Thomas is going to be a lot as well, but it sure seemed like Brees was really just relying on Kamara. He had a couple of short passes that Kamara took, one, screen pass, maybe 60 or 70 yards. So it was a big boost for Brees that he didn't have to do too much for. Close, but I'm going to go Minshew.
I will go Brees if Michael Thomas is playing, and I'll go Minshew if he's not. Simple as that. For all the reasons that you said, Brees looks better with Michael Thomas, so I will. I'll rely on that as my tiebreaker there.
All right, so let's flip ourselves over here to trades. Got a couple of dynasties here first for you. Odell Beckham, Drew Sample, a 21 second for Myles Gaskin, and a 21 first.
I think it's a fair trade overall, but I do lean the OBJ side. I feel like, I'm moving down one round from a first round pick to a second round pick, but I'm adding the boom potential of OBJ and then, a solid upside tight end in a 2 tight end league. They're incredibly valued in a 2 tight end league and one that's tied to a high value rookie quarterback. So I like that side. I can see the other perspective because you're getting a running back. They're going to be helping you make a run this year and a first round pick, which is awesome. But I'd rather have the OBJ side. What about you?
Yeah, I'll take the OBJ side as well. Kind of like you said, if you take Gaskin and Sample out, most people I think would trade a first round pick for OBJ in a second. So is the upgrade from Sample to Gaskin, likely this year, worth it? And I still think it's worth it there. Granted, this is Superflex start 2 tight ends, so Sample may be a little more valuable than than we're letting on here. But I still think even in that, I'm going to go with OBJ.
Okay, next Dynasty one. Another OBJ question. 14-team PPR, Kenyon Drake or OBJ straight up?
This one's close. I know usually when running backs, have shorter shelf life. Both guys, probably slightly down in value, but I think I'll take Drake here. I believe he turns it on, and if you're a contender, great. You're having him for a stretch run, but he should, as long as he doesn't completely fall apart, he should be able to, get you, pretty good return, even in the offseason as well. If you're, worried about the shorter shelf life of a running back, because while they do have shorter shelf lives, they typically can fetch a prettier penny in trade value. So I'll take Drake.
Yeah, I'm taking Drake for all the reasons you said, and I'll add one additional one quickly. It's a 14-team league, and that's just going to make running backs all that much more difficult to obtain and have depth at the position. So, because of that, I'd rather have Drake where I can find other wide receivers, especially with what OBJ's putting up anymore. I can find other OBJs out there.
So we'll move into the world of redraft next. 12-team PPR. I'm guessing that's Jeff Wilson or Henderson and Tyler Boyd.
It's Russell Wilson, actually.
Russell Wilson. Okay.
I forgot about Jeff Wilson.
Very
easy one, yeah.
Trade, yeah.
It makes it more PPR, difficult.
Yeah, it is pretty tough. So Russell Wilson or Henderson and Boyd.
This has me written all over it. I am definitely the kind of guy that will take his quarterback and trade him for other pieces and then just stream the position. So if that's your goal and you believe in Henderson, I'm totally behind it. For me personally, I think I'm sticking with Wilson, though, because I worry about Henderson. I think he's peaking right now, and once Akers comes back, you go back to an RBBC, and he's not going to be as reliable. So, and on the flip side of that, so far Wilson's looking like he's having a Mahomes, Lamar-like season, and that's a league-winning kind of season. And I don't, if I'm going to give that up, I want something a little bit more reliable than Henderson coming back to me. How about you?
Yeah. I'm there with you. If I'm the Wilson side, I'm going to stay in the Flames and see if this is just that, blow up season. And if I'm the other side, I don't, I don't know that I can cash in a running back and a receiver for a quarterback. Kind of just goes against our philosophy. But if you truly believe, that this is Wilson's blow up season, I don't mind trading what likely amounts to be a backfield where we have multiple running backs in. And Boyd is good, but probably more wide receiver 2-3. So I'll take the Wilson side.
Okay, our next trade, another 14-team league here. Half-point PPR, straight up, Terry McLaurin or James Robinson.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's 14 teams, so it definitely wavers a bit, but I'm on the Terry side. I think he, not like even within the week, but just going forward, he's very much more insulated. What you're going to get from him the rest of the year, whereas you could continue to get that one RB1, and it's probably likely, but there's a much lower season long floor than with Robinson, where he they just don't have a ton invested in him, and you still have the chance that Armstead comes back and maybe he starts looking good and they want to go back to him, or Chris Thompson gets hot. McLaurin just doesn't have really any competition.
Yeah, I'm much more undecided than you because again, as I said before, I believe in James Robinson, and I think what we see this year is what we're going to get the rest of the year. Now, is he going to stay a 1? I don't know, but I could see him being a mid to high 2 the rest of the year, and potentially a 1. So if I had a lot of wide receiver depth and not a lot of running back depth, I think I'd pull the trigger and grab Robinson. In a vacuum, yeah, I guess I lean that way. Part of it because it's a 14-team league, and as I said before, running back depth's a little harder in that kind of league. But I think I lean Robinson. I have no problem going either way, though. It's fair to me.
All right, in our last trade here, we have a redraft 12-team PPR, James Conner and Will Fuller, or Christian McCaffrey, with that team noting that they are 3-0, team that would be getting Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and I think that is an important note. Because if I'm 3-0, McCaffrey is definitely someone that I'm trying to add because I can deal with the loss, the 1 or 2 losses that I could absorb, before he comes back, and compared to like an 0-3 team who you can't, at this point, you can't wait for CMC to come back. You have to get wins now. So I get the trade from both perspectives. Like if I'm 0-3, I would love to move CMC. Getting Connor is a great ad. It's the Fuller part that I kind of struggle with. I don't want to play the game with him and the injuries. It's so old. I mean, if you told me I could get Connor and Deontay Johnson, I'd do that. Even though they're on the same team, I would do something like that. But Fuller, it really doesn't interest me. So I'll stick with the CMC side. I guess if I'm 0-3 and this is the best offer I got, I would pull the trigger and take Connor because, again, you have to move on from CMC at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially if you're 1-2 or 0-3, you need to get some wins. So it seems like it probably helps both teams out. But yeah, it's just easy CMC. If you're the 3-0 team, you definitely pull the trigger and get him. Especially, Connor's, good, but he's going to have games where, he disappears at times. And Fuller, I think they're going to spread it around. He'll have his big games. He'll also have his games where, he seems like his floor is higher than usual, but there still are some other guys there that are going to score. So I'll take CMC.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Will, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, good luck everybody this week. Keep an eye out for when the NFL makes their official announcement on these, the Titans and I think to a lesser extent the Vikings. They haven't, I don't think announced anything fully for the Vikings game, but keep an eye on both of those because I would imagine after the NFL makes their official statement, the sites will come out and start saying things as well. So you can also email the site that you work with if they haven't said anything after the NFL says something about it. But I would, keep an eye out for that. And good luck, everybody. Hopefully your team stay healthy. We don't have a injury massacre like we had 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, let us hope not. Thanks for listening, everyone. Tune in next week for more waivers and start sit questions. Until then, trust your board.